And for the final time in 2021, we're going to throw it to the Farm Report here. And as always, joining me on the Farm Report is the main man himself, Harry Siemens. The Farm Report brought to you by Wolf Enterprises. And Harry, great to have you on here, the show for one last time here in 2021. How are you doing 3 days before Christmas? You getting into the festivities, the holiday season at all?
We're just going to kind of play it by ear and take it easy, right? And yeah, I have six grandchildren that live 5 minutes away, and my daughter and son in law, and so we'll spend some time together. I have a daughter and son in law and a grandson in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. We'll obviously talk to them by video, but I did see them in August. They visited me for 10 days. So that's all good.
Yeah, Harry has a lot of family in many different places, which is awesome. And it's going to be awesome for you to connect with them and spend time with them this holiday season for sure, Harry. But, putting a wrap on 2021, it was a pretty interesting year, the drought back in, the summer months, looking at many other things. I mean, the flood in BC that affected animals and affected BC. But talk about, 2021 as a whole, looking back at it, what it, brought to agriculture, to farmers here in Manitoba and just in the world in general.
And first and foremost, I did a survey back in the beginning of December of farmers on Twitter, and we may have talked about it a little bit before, but I wrote the article, and basically what the headlines should indicate is that yes, we had a drought. Yes, we had probably a 40% cutback in our crops, and at the same time, the farmers, I asked them, I said, what's the status of the soil moisture on your farm? Because Agriculture Canada came out with a drought map, and it went on Twitter, and producers right away said, well, that area that's indicated as my area, that's not what my situation is like. So I did a survey of them, and so for the most part, they were all thankful for the rain and snow that we've gotten so far as fall of 2021. And but secondly, we're going to need spring showers and more rain for next spring. Some farmers are concerned that if we don't get the runoffs and we don't get the rain and the snowfall, next year could be a repeat of 2021 as far as crop production is concerned. So that's the big story of the year as far as I'm concerned. The second big part of that story has to do with the prices. I've talked to farmers about forward selling. I mean, some farmers started forward selling their 2021 crop last fall. They know what they're going to plant. Normally they would have a good crop. So some farmers forward got a little optimistic once the price started to go up, and they started to forward sell more than what would be their normal comfort zone. So some of them had to buy the grain that they sold for $10 a bushel back for maybe $18 or $19 a bushel to fill their contract. So that's not what it's designed to do, but that's how it's designed to work for the buyers, not just the sellers. So, but at the same time, the positive is that the prices are basically double than what they were for the crop year 2020. And that's compensated for the 35 to 40% drop in production this year. So they're getting paid well for the crop. The quality of the crop, for the most part, was still good. Just because we have a drought doesn't mean we have a bad crop, except in one area. And I did an interview with Dan Sawatsky yesterday, who's the manager of the Keystone Potato Producers Association out of Portage la Prairie. They look after all the processing of potatoes. And so producers in the western part of the province, as far as potato crop is concerned, did okay because they had access to the Assiniboine Delta aquifer. They can basically 90% of the processing potatoes are grown in that particular area. But we also have some further east in our area, and where we didn't have any runoff, the irrigation ponds were not there. So we also have quite a drop in potato quantity and quality, because once it gets too hot, once the humidity's up there at 30 to 35, or the temperature, the potato crops suffer, especially if there isn't irrigation and moisture to go along with it. So, number one, we have the drought. Number two, we have crop prices. And number three, a close third, the drought again related, but the cattle industry. I was just processing an interview I did with a cattle producer from Sundown, Manitoba, Randy Kachik, and he's basically liquidated 45 to 50% of his herd just because there wasn't enough feed. And he says, I'm not in financial difficulty. I'm not in bad health. It was a management decision where he got rid of half of his breeding herd for this coming year because he didn't want to pay the higher prices for feed, anywhere from 10 to, he said, I think 13 cents a pound. He says, he couldn't make a living, so he's better off getting his money for his breeding stock, and then from there going ahead to replenish that breeding stock once looks like he's going to have feed for next year. But the feed has to come from his ground, not from somebody else's ground, because it's just too expensive. And I think the overall factor, British Columbia, we're still working on that aspect to make sure that our grain is moving west to the ports, but it's still a struggle. And the other thing, part of that has to do with COVID. And we've talked about that before, where truckers, we're going to see probably 15, 20,000 truckers that are going to park their rigs because they're not going to get vaccinated going across. So that's a huge supply chain issue. And so another part has to do with machinery prices. We had a chance to visit with Machinery Pete, who's looked at auction prices for 32 years. And he said he's never seen machinery prices the way they are right now. And it's just like, if you see a tractor on an auction, and because of the auctions taking place online, a guy from Oklahoma can buy a tractor in Winkler. And if he wants that tractor, he'll pay the price for it and bring it back to his place in Oklahoma, vice versa. So those are the issues that are facing us as far as agriculture is concerned.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Harry. Those were, things that we talked about quite a bit, talking about the drought, talking about the prices and crops and just on the market, and as well as cattle is something we talked about quite a bit. And of course, can't forget about Machinery Peak, as we talked about last week. But, talking about, you said how we could be seeing the same thing if we don't get the right amount of moisture for 2022 in terms of the drought. In terms of the other big things that we saw here in 2021, what should we be looking forward to in 2022 as how those stores in terms of the cattle industry, the prices on the market will be in 2022 at this point?
Yeah, that is the $64 question. Talked to quite a few farmers and analysts and so forth, and right now we're probably in a weather market as far as prices are concerned. The weather market doesn't normally start till April or May of the next following year, but we're watching. We're watching what's going to happen with snowfall. We're watching what's going to happen with rainfall, and that's going to have a lot to do with what the crop will be like for 2021. So looking forward, things are relatively positive. The governments have come up with different programs for different sectors of agriculture. We have the hog industry, we have the cattle industry, we have the poultry industry, and the British Columbia situation is a smaller area, but nevertheless, it's been a horrendous situation. Kentucky and a couple of other states in the United States where farms have been demolished. It's a horrible scene. And so that has to recover. And you know what? There's a typhoon that hit the farming sector in the Philippines. and they too are suffering, in some places starving because there's no food locally, and the prices of food are going up. And I guess the other thing going into 2022 is, number one, we've got to be looking at, and I don't want to overemphasize it, but the supply chain. You know, what's going to happen with parts? What's going to happen with food? What's going to happen with deliveries going back and forth across the border? Also, ocean freight. China is always a mixed bag. They're always kind of a question mark as to what exactly they are doing, because when they do something, it's always in their favor that they're trying to do something. So we're going to be looking at China, whether it's hog production, whether they're buying grain, and we're going to just keep looking for moisture here in Western Canada. But for the most part, I believe our farmers here in Western Canada, and Canada for that matter, are probably as good a position as any farmer in the entire world.
Talking about something now, Harry, that we've talked about as well before here on the Farm Report here in 2021. The PED virus. You told me yesterday that there's an update on the situation. Give us a rundown on the newly updated situation on the PED virus.
Very briefly, last week I think we talked about 22 farms that had broken with the PED virus. We're now up to 27. And that's not a good thing. We're climbing and climbing and climbing, and so and the other thing is, normally it would stay in eastern Manitoba, but a few of those things, it has jumped the Highway 75, and so the update basically is that the PED virus continues to multiply, and secondly, biosecurity, biosecurity, biosecurity are the three key issues that I would suggest to hog farmers and livestock feed truck drivers and everybody. We got to be careful. You don't want to see this thing spread like it did a couple of years ago to about 88 facilities. Hopefully we can keep it under 30, if not under 30, then under 40. But just as an aside, on January 8th or 9th, I'm heading to Banff, Alberta, and we're going to do the show that Wednesday. We will do it from the Banff Pork Seminar at the Banff Springs Hotel, and it's my winter vacation in Banff at a pig meeting, eh? How's that?
Yeah.
That
seems pretty fitting from Mr. Harry Siemens for sure. It's going to be awesome to do the show then, Harry, on January 8th. While you're at that pig meeting, which will be interesting to see what's happening over there at that seminar at that time. But a couple more things here, Harry. You want to give a Christmas greeting for farmers? Let's hear your Christmas greeting.
That my shout out is to the entire agricultural industry. I wish them a really blessed and Merry Christmas, and for me, the reason for the season is Jesus Christ, and so I wish everybody a blessed Christmas. But at the same time, not just the farmers. We have the farm workers, we have the suppliers, we have the people that develop crops and do the genetics and all those kinds of things. And we have government people involved. The ag industry is huge. It's so big. Not only is it huge in numbers, it's huge because it feeds you and me, Graeme, and all the other people around. And so I wish that entire ag industry a very Merry Christmas. Also to all our viewers and, of course, everyone. And as my friend and mentor, Orion Samuelson, who retired exactly a year ago after 60-some years as a broadcaster doing what I do, he said, if you eat, you are involved in agriculture. And so that's a message that I'd like to leave to everybody.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Like you've said many times, Harry, and I'm on board with this, just knowing what farmers and people in the industry do. Farmers feed the world, so gotta give even though I'm not wearing a hat, a tip of the cap to them. for sure. During this holiday season, especially. But let's finish it off. The final farming tip of the year for Harry Siemens from Harry Siemens on Siemens Says Here. Harry's farming tip of the week for Farmer on Rise and Shine.
My tip of the week is that, as I said before, if Canadian farmers are about as good off as any farmer in the entire world. And I would say, look at 2021 as something that's happened. You know, we were able to do okay. Look forward to 2022 and don't change anything except a little bit of cosmetic changes as far as rotation is concerned. But do what you did, because what you did and didn't happen for you in 2020 wasn't your fault. So my tip of the week is, you know what? Sometimes farmers feel guilty because they think they didn't do the right thing. You did the right thing. You fed the world. So keep going forward and keep doing the right thing, just exactly as you have learned to do. And there will be more programs to help you improve even more.
Well, as always, wise words from a very wise man in the industry, Harry Siemens, for one
Love
final
it.
time here in 2021 on his segment, The Farm Report on Rise and Shine Manitoba. Harry, until we see you in the new year in 2022, I can't wait for that. But you have a wonderful holiday. Stay safe out there as well as always, and have yourself a wonderful and Merry Christmas there.
You
Harry.
too, my friend.
Thanks, Harry. You take care. And Harry Siemens,